competed that's into archery and they're just a hunter, the emphasis isn't on being exact. It's being, I can hit a pie plate at 20 yards. And so that's good enough to go. So, I've never really worked on it. Some people don't pick up their bows and shoot year round. They wait till, a couple weeks before hunting season and then pick it up. So the dedication to the actual sport isn't as great.
I could see that. Yeah, I guess that makes sense to me. Because, like if you're hunting, if you're looking at a 3D whitetail buck, you've got whatever the area is, right?
Yeah, long's heart. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of guys or gals who are shooting just purely for hunting, if you're in that,
then I'm good.
You're in that zone, I'm good.
Yeah.
But that doesn't fly for competition.
No. And realistically, if you think about it the other way, I mean, you because you're taking the life of something, granted it's an animal, you should be more exact than somebody that's shooting at a piece of paper at 20 yards.
100%. For sure. Are we good?
We're rolling.
Oh, okay. We're rolling. So it's interesting that you had said that because I agree 100% with you about if you're putting a rifle or a bow sight on an animal, you should be better than this.
You should be better than that. I think it's gotten better over the years than it was initially, but I think that you owe it to the animal to take it as best as possible.
Yeah.
I had somebody, I was at a Vegas shoot one year and I was really nervous because I get nervous. Everybody gets nervous at a competition. Hey, your hands sweat and you get practice rounds. And I walked back after the practice round and Randall was sitting there and another guy was sitting there and he's like, how's it going? I'm like, well, I need another round because I'm a little nervous. My hands are sweating. And he looks at me. He's like, why? You're shooting a piece of paper. And I'm like, well, that's why you win and I don't. So and I think that's what keeps you coming back. Same thing with, with people that do the bike racing. Mm-hmm. There's only one winner and everybody else is trying to get to that point. Mm-hmm. So there's that big push. Well, I'm going to try to do better next time, or I'm going to set my goal so that I finish here, or that's what keeps you doing it. That's your drive. That's your everything.
Yeah, that's what keeps you motivated.
Yeah,
like for us with the events, what we've tried to do, because of the fact that only one person can win,
right,
or only 3 people can get on the podium. Mm-hmm. In a lot of events where all of the values put on that it's easier for everybody who's not on the podium
to quit.
Yeah, to quit, to be discouraged. And like if you feel that you will never be that person, then what's the motivation to try to get better?
Why should you?
Right.
Yeah.
So we've tried to, ironically, my t-shirt is you versus you. So it's, that, and I think that the community has really embraced that ethos within the events is, there's professionals that come to our events to race them.
Sure.
That race around the world. But then there's people who, they're just like you and I.
Either riding their bikes around the yard,
right,
or around the city, and I'm going to give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah.
And, everybody strives to be the best, but realistically, when you look at it, there's one best for every event. Hey, yep. And then you can't go, well, second place is the first loser.
Right.
Because there's only one.
Yep.
So to stay motivated and to consider that, I have potential, it's to work at it and set realistic goals.
Yep.
If you don't have realistic goals, then sometimes you just stop. I've seen a lot of archers quit over the years.
Oh, I bet.
And
is that, what have you seen drive them to quit? Their results?
Their results. Yeah.
Or lack of?
Or lack of results. Or, it's a different, if you compete here, in the UP, you have a small window. Mm-hmm. But then if you do well here and then you go to a bigger event, you have to figure that everybody that did well in their community now is at that event.
Sure.
So you may not do as well as you wanted, but that doesn't mean that you should stop or you don't ever have a chance.
Let me ask you this question, because I don't know the answer to it at all. Are people who shoot competitively here in the UP that you're aware of,
Mm-hmm.
how do they stack up when they leave the UP and go somewhere else? I'm putting you on the spot.
Depends upon their experience. If they've done it
Sure.
more than, once or twice, then I think that they'd stack up.
Mm-hmm.
If it's their first time, I think the best thing to do is to go for the experience and enjoy the journey to see what higher competition levels is like, and then focus your goals afterwards.
That makes sense. So if somebody does well here, let's say they've shot for a couple of years, they're in the competitive circuit, they get to a point where they're winning, they shoot pretty consistently. Do you think they'll stack up pretty well when they leave to go, let's say, something more regional outside the UP? Or is there still like a moment where you go and you're like, oh, like I need to dig in a little bit. I need to get a little bit better.
I think if you do well here, and if you can take that focus into a bigger event and not get overwhelmed by the fact that it's a bigger event, because the worst thing that you can do in competition is get into your head.
Yeah.
Because archery is like 95% mental.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that person that can ignore that, then will do really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go there with the expectation that you're gonna win, sometimes that kind of kicks you in the butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be eye-opening.
It can be extremely eye-opening.
But I mean, that's probably true for anything, right? Anything, if you're going to do it competitively, bike racing is no different.
No.
You could race in the UP and get a pretty high opinion of yourself, thinking you're pretty good, and then go to Wisconsin and get your butt whipped.
Wax. Yeah.
It can happen.
But then, that's the neat thing about sports. Hey, so if you have that drive in you where you want to succeed at something, then that helps you and motivates you and gives you that extra little push to maybe train harder or try different techniques or, read a book on mental training, because, everybody has the technique. It's just our brain that sometimes gets in the way.
Do you have something you've read for mental training?
Oh, I've read lots of different things.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You got anything that comes to mind that you recommend?
Not that I can...
Not off the top of your head?
Not
Okay.
off the top of my head.
Okay.
No.
Is that something you recommend, though, broadly? Like to people who come into the shop and they're looking to start shooting competitively? Do you recommend that?
Depends on how they're shooting. Some people seem to have no problem whatsoever with not getting into their head. And they're just doing everything the same repeatedly. You can watch body language.
Yeah.
Do you guys do body language in biking and stuff? You watch how somebody, if they, are biking and they didn't do as good as they wanted to, or they're not training, and you see that sort of disgusted,
Oh, for sure.
look.
Yes.
And I don't know about in biking, but in archery, if your body language sucks,
Yeah.
that's reinforcing that suckiness
Sure.
into your head instead of focusing on the positive and moving forward from it. Because you can watch people on the line shooting all the time, and you're like, dude, you got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to change where you're focused.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting with you bringing up the body language thing is we had kids in here yesterday from Bike Club. So there are apprentice leadership program kids. So they're going to be leading
Other
younger kids.
Sure.
And one of the things I talked to the kids about at the end, and I spent a little bit of time kind of trying to really focus on it, is body language. I said, what if you want to get a leg up on most people, it's learn how to read body language. So after a person is done talking, keep your eyes on them, because they're going to keep telling you something about where they're at or what they're thinking or what's going on in their head. But they're not saying it, they're showing you. It's 100% true with body language.
Well, it is 100% true. I mean, you can tell. Well, did they take to heart anything that I just said, or were they, thinking about what's for lunch later?
Yep.
Or geez, I wish this was over and I could get back outside and do my thing.
Right.
Yeah, body language is huge.
Yeah, I thought of you and Randall actually when we went to camp through the weekend for Memorial Day, because I was at the shop and you guys let me shoot from 30. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know how long I was there, a couple hours or something, but, leaving, there was different data points or pieces of feedback that Randall had shared with me.
Sure.
So when we went to camp, I spent the weekend shooting from 30.
Right.
Trying to, so it's like I took to heart what he said and what you said, and then tried to take it back to camp to actually applying it and figuring out like, how is this going to work for me?
For you.
And it took until Sunday to figure it out. I mean, I wasn't shooting terrible, but it wasn't where I wanted to be.
Where you wanted to be.
Right?
Right.
But it was just kind of sorting out that nuance of those things he shared or that you shared, and then figuring out like, okay, how am I going to incorporate this and kind of get into a fundamental flow? And eventually I got there.
Takes a little bit of time. Takes a little bit of practice.
It does. And the further out, I mean, it seems like technically the further out you get from the target, any nuance in your form and your technique, it must be amplified right across space.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you're like shooting right an inch at 20,
you're going to be like 3 inches at 30.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
People forget that little bubble on their sight is for level. Hey, so as you step out farther in yardages, if your bow isn't straight up and down, if you're not level, you're going to hit off left or right, depending on which way the top of your bow is tipped.
Right.
So sometimes if you're in a competition and you're hitting a little bit and you can't adjust your sight, you just tip your bow and you can get them to go back in there.
Yeah. Let's step back for a sec because we've been actually rolling here for a bit, but we haven't introduced you. So we just started recording and we're just talking about stuff.
You just get it. It's easy to talk about something that you're passionate about.
Exactly.
Forget about.
So let's back up and let's talk about Shelley and what you do for a living. I think people have probably figured it out by now, but let's introduce the shop. Let's introduce you, talk about Randall, whatever you want to touch on.
Sure. So Shelley Wellings, and I own Straight Line Archery in Ishpeming.
And how long have you been there?
28 years.
And I didn't know you were there until Eddie told me about it.
I know. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
So if you have to be looking to find us.
Sure.
So our clientele obviously is, I joke and I shop at Walmart, but I say our clientele isn't, just anybody that comes in. You actually have to be interested in archery or looking for us or need help with archery, and then you find us and then you come in.
Right. So describe, I guess, where you're at for people in Ishpeming.
Ishpeming. Well, it was easier before they started all the construction in front of the shop.
I know. I just saw that last week.
It's like turn at the roundabout and go north, and you drive past our building. But now you've got to kind of detour. But we're across. If you know Ishpeming, we're kind of across from the cemetery.
Okay.
Used to be a bowling alley.
I was going to ask. That's what I figured it had been.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the basement.
It's in the basement, which is perfect for an archery shop because there's no windows that you have to worry about people shooting. And yeah.
What else is in the building with you? So what is upstairs?
Upstairs, there used to be a lot of stuff, but now it's just me and the florist.
Okay.
So it's a huge building that just has 2 tenants in it.
All right. So you've been there for the whole time, or did you move there?
No, I started out in the old Gazer building downtown Ishpeming.
Okay, that's right.
Yep. And then was there for 13 years-ish. And then now I've been at the where I am now for 16 years, 15 years. When
you established the business, was it just you? Was it you and somebody else? Was it you and
No,
a spouse?
It was, well, so I was previously married before Randall, and, I believe everything happens for a reason. So we didn't last. We were married for 10 years, but he was the one that pushed me into, you should try starting an archery shop because that's what you love to do. And so it worked, 28 years later, I'm still doing the same thing and loving
What
it.
were you doing before?
I was working for an orthodontist in Marquette.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a change.
It is a change.
So you're working for an orthodontist, but you've got this love for archery.
Right.
And was that competitively shooting?
Yeah. The older I get, the more I don't like shooting things that are alive.
Okay.
So, did I used to hunt? Yeah. And now I've gotten to the point where, you have this huge high because you shot something, and then you have a huge low because you just, killed something.
Sure. Took its life.
Took its life. And I've decided that that's not the route that I want to go, but the competition aspect of it, oh my, that's just something completely different.
Love that.
Love that. Yep.
So at the time when the ex-husband recommended you should do this, you were hunting at that time?
No,
No?
I started out with competition archery. I probably didn't hunt for the first 5 years that I shot a bow because I felt like, maybe I wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me 5 years to work up the courage to get out in the woods and shoot a deer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started with competitive shooting.
Mm-hmm.
How did you develop the interest in shooting at all? Did somebody in the family shoot?
Yeah, no. Nobody in my brother shot a little bit, but wasn't fantastic. I had a boyfriend at the time that shot archery, and he said, you should try it because I think you'd probably like it. Mm-hmm. And he was right. Yeah. Just a little bit right.
So that was the introduction.
That was the introduction. It was an old bow that was his that we, fixed up so it would fit me. And you and I had talked about it before. I worked all through school, so I never got to play any sports or do anything competitive wise. And I was 21, I think, when I started and found out that I'm extremely competitive. And it's just sort of a buzz.
What is it about it? Like, can you relate for you personally what attracts you to it?
I think a lot of it is it's just you. Not that I'm against team sports or anything, but it's just you and wanting to achieve something. I'm not going to say just winning because there's only one winner in every competition. Hey, so it's achieving a level and then having the gratification from getting that. And it just sort of makes you feel good. Mm-hmm. Why do people race bikes?
Oof, lots of reasons.
Oh.
Some want to win. The endurance cycling world, I think that there's a lot of people that gravitate toward it for very deep personal reasons, like they're working through
something. This is like the runner that runs because it helps them mentally.
Yes.
So that they don't have, anxiety, or it gives them a release.
Yep.
Which I think is important. You can have the worst day in the world and go out and shoot your bow and feel better. Mm-hmm. It's got to be the same with everything else. Mm-hmm. And that has to be what motivates you to doing those things. And then the more motivated you are, the more peace you get from it, I think the better you become.
Mm-hmm. You seem like somebody who enjoys sharing this with other people.
Once you get me to talk.
Yeah, because I've only known you and Randall since December.
Right.
But in getting to know you, because I get to meet a lot of different people through our events, and it was like, I just had a sense out of the gate as I got you talking more that you genuinely enjoy what you're doing. And you really genuinely seem to enjoy seeing people come in and get into it. Whether you call it a sport or whatever it is, you just seem really genuinely interested in getting people behind a bow.
I think everybody needs something. Life's not always easy.
Yeah.
and you need something to make you feel good about yourself.
Sure. Some outlet.
Some outlet, yeah. And if you're lucky enough, like I think you or like me, to be able to work in a field that you're actually passionate about, it makes a huge difference.
Well, there's no doubt, because I've worked in fields that I wasn't passionate about it. And the only thing that got me through that was just
what you did in the spare time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in a relentless, like, even if I'm doing something that's shitty and I don't like, I'm still going to do it well.
To the best of your ability.
Yes. Yeah. I can't not show up and give 100%. That's just the way I'm wired.
Says something about individuals.
Yeah.
When you give all that you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's some people, I think that you get wired that way, which is good. It's good. I'd say through our events with like 906 on the youth side, we're trying, I mean, that would be one of the things that I've said this before. I actually don't care if when the kids leave the program, if they continue to ride a bike or not, if the bike turns into just trail running, or if it turns into playing the piano, or if it turns into swimming, if we can just instill like some of the values and the standards and the work ethic that we're trying to equip kids with so they can go out and be successful at whatever they choose to do, I'm good. As long as they're out doing their thing and they love it and they're giving it 100% and giving the world hell, I'm happy.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I was looking forward to bringing you in because I think that archery is a very relatable sport. It's a very relatable thing to do to what we do. It's outdoors. It's silent sport-ish, right?
It's an individual sport.
Individual.
But you're surrounded by other people that are like-minded.
Community-centric.
Yeah. So the really exciting thing for me is, I've been in business long enough where I've seen kids grow up, right? Yep. And maybe move away. Mm-hmm. So if they've got this archery background or a bike background, when they move to some place where they don't know anybody, you find that group then. Yeah. That you can get involved with, and that will help you meet people in that area and make you feel part of the community.
Yes.
And how great is that? Because when you move to, say you move to a big city, how do you know? Because not everybody is the same as they are in the UP. Right? So how do you know that this person is, like-minded or has the same core values as you, or, God forbid, isn't a, abuser or, a whatever disrespectful type kind of person. So if you go to a bike club or someplace that does that, or an archery club, you tend to find people that are like-minded to you. And in what I've seen in my experiences, they're all pretty great people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like you're with your people.
Right.
Even if you don't know them.
Even if you don't know them. So it doesn't take that long. You have now something that you're passionate about in common with somebody else that has the same thoughts as you.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of like when you're, the example would be for bike clubs. So the kids have to have a nameplate on the front of their bike. Mm-hmm. And I might have shared this story before in another episode with somebody, but what we're seeing happen now, because we're expanding and we're in 14, 15 communities, is these families will go on camping trips in the summer.
Sure.
They bring their kids. They're not going together. They happen to be in the same place. They happen to be from Lansing or Eau Claire or Marquette. They're from different places. Their kids are there with their bikes, with their nameplates.
Yep.
They end up running into kids in the campground with an adventure team nameplate, but they're complete strangers. They have no idea who they are. But what they do know is they've got bike club in common. And it ends up being like that bridge.
Sure.
That tells them what they have in common. And that's like my people.
Then you become community and friends, and what a great experience.
You know what's interesting in talking through this is archery is an individual activity. It's not a team sport. But as we're talking through it is, you're amongst people who are your community. Cycling is the same thing.
Sure.
Running is the same thing.
Sure.
It's interesting to me. I feel like, I'm curious what your take is on this. I feel like when you get into these activities or sports that are more about the person, you versus you. What can you do to personally improve and get better, et cetera? Those people, the people that are wired that way, that participate in those types of activities, I don't know how to explain it, but they sometimes seem wired differently than people who come out of the more traditional team environment where it's not about the individual, it's about the team. I don't know how to describe it. It's just something that I see within the community we've been in. And even when I've been in your shop, it's interesting because you can tell the people coming in to shoot are from a wide range, a number
backgrounds.
of backgrounds, walks of life. Yeah, I've seen doctors that I know in there. On paper, if you didn't know that they had archery in common, you might think these people have nothing in common.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
But if you put a bow in their hands,
now all of a sudden we do.
Nothing else matters.
Right.
We got this in common.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's interesting because the people seem less polarized by team identity. Like if you're from Ishpeming, right? I'm from Marquette.
Right.
There's a sport rivalry.
Well, of course there is.
But in archery, there doesn't seem like there is. Like in a way it transcends that.
Yeah, no, there wouldn't be, this geographical location against this geographical location. Yeah. No, there isn't that.
So it's different. Now, maybe if, the Youper shooters, the Youper archers went to Worlds, I don't know if then you kind of end up in
I don't think it happens. I don't think it happens as much as it does in sports. So in some world competitions, you have team events.
Okay.
Like country team events.
Yep.
So when I shot in Germany, I was on the U.S. team.
Okay.
Because previously to Germany, I had won or I had finished in the top 3 at a national event. So then you're asked to be on like the U.S. team.
Okay.
So for those people that really get into it, then you would have, the U.S. team. So it's, it's one person from each aspect of archery, whether it's, traditional, freestyle, bow hunter, and then their spores combined go against all the other countries combined. Mm-hmm. And then you have so then I think you see it a little bit more, but that doesn't happen as much.
So you shot for Team USA.
Yeah, I sucked though.
Yeah? Didn't go well?
No, it didn't go well. I was very, very unprepared. That was in Germany, and I had no clue what I was in store for. And I think it was a 5-day competition, and by the 3rd day, 167 people or 170 people had quit.
Really?
It was so. It would be like the poster.
Yeah, Margie.
Yep. So it's this grueling 5 days. You have to be on the top of your game for 5 days, and it's exhausting. And we were shooting in the mountains, and I have never experienced that sort of exhaustion from just climbing. And we shoot an 80-yard target that's like this and
up like above you
up a hill, and so you have to cut yardage when you're shooting uphill, and I can't remember, I think we cut like 12 yards, and I was happy to hit the bottom of the target, the 3, because the ladies that with me hit the rocks below the target. I have never shot anything like that before in my entire life.
Have you shot anything like that since?
No. Because that was just insane. But in Europe, that's their circuit. I mean, those guys that do that professionally and go around to the different countries and shoot, they've figured out what to do. And I asked Randall, I said, if you would have known, how would we have practiced here? And he's like, you would have put a target in a tree and shot, up at the target in a tree. Who does that? I'm like that. It was just insane. So, I mean, I got waxed. It was just, I'll never forget it. Great experience. I mean, it doesn't matter if you sucked, you still got to go. And I shot all 5 days and it was fantastic. But, you know, every night you'd wake up with Charlie horses in your calves, and it just, you know, there was a couple shots where the ladies would hold on to your belt because you're shooting off a picnic table on a cliff going down. And it just, I never done it. It's got to be like that race.
Sure. It's and the Margie of archery.
Right.
Of competitive shooting.
Just insane. Yeah.
And that's for them, that's normal.
That's their normal. There was a young, everybody younger than me as a kid, but he would have been in his, you know, like probably late 20s or maybe 26, something like that. And somebody bet him he couldn't run up to get his arrows, and he did. And, you know, and I mean, we're using a rope to climb up, you know, to pull our arrows out of the target, and there he is running. And he was from South Africa, but just he shoots that circuit, so he's in fantastic shape. And Randall talked to him afterwards, and he's like, "Yeah, I never should have done that because halfway up, I thought all these people are watching me, and I can't stop." So he says, "I just had to gut it out and get to the top." Yeah, but it's great experience, just fantastic experience.
Is there anything like that stateside?
I'm sure that there is.
Not that you've been to?
You know, Darrington, Washington probably was the closest to it because you're shooting in the, you know, it would be like the west side of the Cascade Mountains. So it's a lot of elevation and uphill and downhill, but nothing like.
So how's the course laid out? You know, if you're there or in Washington, are you going from, how many targets are you shooting at through the series of a day?
So there's 28 targets and you shoot 4 arrows at each target. And it was funny because, you know, every competition you go to, they give you, in the beginning, they give you this, okay, you have to have your score turned in by X this time. And they gave us 8 hours. And I kind of laughed. I'm like, oh my God, who's going to be out there for 8 hours? We were out there for 8 hours. I mean, we barely got our scorecards in time. I'm like, this is insane. But fun. You know, a great experience. Just, I've done nothing like that since.
Interesting. So you went into it, you had no idea it was going to be like that?
No. Should have done a little bit more research before I went. Yeah.
That is so funny.
But great. I mean, you know, just being in Europe was great, you know, because you learn to not take for granted what we have here.
In what way? What do you mean?
Just even something as stupid as like, so the hotel we stayed at for a week in Germany, you know, here you go to a hotel and there's a microwave in your room, there's a coffee pot in your room, there's a refrigerator in the room,
right.
In the hallway, there's ice machine, there's
the
a pop
amenities.
Machine. There's none of that there. I mean, granted, it was a small town, but there isn't. You know, they look at us like we're retarded when we ask for ice in your soda. Because
that's not a thing at all.
It's not a thing. No.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, you know, what we've taken for granted here is insane. We're pretty lucky.
Oh, there's no doubt. But when you have it all, you don't know how lucky you are, right?
Correct.
Until it's taken away.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's been a theme. I say that all the time. Like, we've talked about it for when we rode around the UP. When you go a couple weeks without the creature comforts of life and you're on your bike living basically outside, you start to appreciate the shit out of stuff that you take for granted.
Exactly. You know, it's like having a shower.
Absolutely.
You know, it's
absolutely
not having to go to a community bathroom in the lodging where you're staying at because you have bathrooms everywhere, you know, in your own room.
Yes.
I think, you know, people that complain about how we have it here need to go and experience someplace else so that they can then appreciate what we do actually have here.
Yeah. When I'm curious, so I don't forget to ask this question. So you're encouraged to start a business.
Right.
Because you love to do it.
Right.
How'd it go in the beginning?
How did it go?
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of times there's like how we think it's going to go, and then there's how it actually goes.
It was funny because the guy that I was married to at the time had never shot archery. Hey, so he picked up archery because I was shooting archery, and he worked at the mine. And when he'd get off work, he'd come up to the shop, and people would come in and they'd look to him and start asking him questions, and he's just like, "Well, I don't know. You have to ask my wife.
Ask the owner."
Yeah, and it took, I would say, a good 5 years for people to, one, kind of accept that a woman is running a business and that she sort of knows what she's talking about. Mm-hmm. And then take what I had to offer, instead of, looking, even if, say you were at the shop, I mean, they come up and talk to you in the beginning, and not realize that, I was the one that was doing it. So it took a while, a long while, but kind of expected that a little bit.
Yeah. So what year did you open?
97.
97. How did you handle that? As people are coming in and, they're kind of going to your husband who isn't the owner. How'd you roll with the punches on that?
I think now I'm okay with it, but back then I think it probably ticked me off a little bit.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. But I get it because, maybe sometimes we live in a chauvinistic world.
Yeah.
I think the reason, or one of the reasons why there are so many women that are shooting and feel comfortable coming to the shop and buying stuff and getting into the sport is probably because it's not a man that runs it, so they didn't have any problem coming in and trying the sport or thinking that they could do okay at the sport or getting engrossed in the sport. I think that helped a little bit, or I like to think that it helped a little bit.
There's no doubt.
And
there's no doubt. If a female owner is the central figure of the business in a male-dominated activity,
correct,
you're definitely going to have a positive impact, no doubt.
Well, I think so.
No doubt.
Yeah. And so that's been really good. And what I found over the years, if you're looking at, and it doesn't matter if it's youth or adult, and I don't mean any disrespect to the male species this way, but women listen better than men do.
Women listen.
Maybe that's what it is. And I think some of it is they don't have this preconceived notion that I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think women want to excel at it. And so they'll take what you say and apply it. I think women apply what I've tried to express to them somewhat better than males.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, it's interesting because for you being a woman who owns the shop, archery shop, that's other women are going to identify with you as the owner. Like, Shelley's a woman.
Sure.
Women can do this. And you don't see that a lot in the hunting industry or just in that outdoor space that much. No,
I think it's hard to be a role model figure. I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on it. There's a woman in the archery circuit in the United States that Paige Pierce, that actually when I first started shooting, shot with her mom. She's phenomenal, and she's taken on the role as being, she does a lot of podcasts, does a lot of videos, talks to a lot of people, and people watch her, and I think she's great for our sport. Because it allows people to know that, I can do that too.
What's the name again?
Paige.
Paige?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's fantastic.
So she's a podcaster and archer?
Yes.
Okay, got it. I'll have to check her out.
And a hunter.
Not familiar with the name.
She's done a lot of hunting. She's won a lot. She's pretty consistent.
You have any idea? I might have asked you this question before when we were at the shop. From your competitive shoots, what percentage of the people shooting are female or women? Is it still male dominant?
I think it's better than it used to be, but I still think seems like there's a lot more males than females, and they make more money, which isn't right. But but if there's more people in that group, then there's more, money going into the pool.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, when I've been in there, I've seen women of all ages, and I've seen young girls in shooting too.
A lot of girls.
Yeah, which is great.
Well, and girls, I think young girls have maybe a special bond with their dads. And if the dad is into hunting or outdoor stuff, sometimes they get into it because of that bond with their dad. And then they want to succeed because they're trying to look good to their father.
Sure.
I think some of that comes from that.
Sure. That makes sense. I'm thinking about, it'd be nice to see, I think some women may not be shooting just purely out of lack of awareness, because I think that bow hunting or archery has been largely tied to the idea of hunting.
Sure.
Which we talked about earlier.
Right.
So I think if more people knew that this sport is out there.
There's so many other aspects of archery other than just hunting.
Right. It's actually a small part of it.
I look at it as being a small part of it. Somebody that's a diehard hunter would look at it as, well, that's the most important thing.
Right.
But there's a lot of colleges now that offer scholarships for archery. That's a huge increase from where it was years ago, and you don't have to hunt.
Absolutely not.
No, and it's
so are there archery clubs forming or teams at say the college level?
Colleges levels, yeah. Years ago we had archery at Northern, not as a class but as a club.
Okay.
And then unfortunately, the kids that were involved with it get older and graduate and move on, and you don't always have that influx of new that are motivated to do that sort of thing come back in.
What were they shooting here at Northern? Do you know what type of bow? Was it a range of different types of bows?
Well, their archery class they do with recurves.
Okay.
It's all recurves, and you just have to be careful because you're not allowed to have a bow on campus. But
who supplied the equipment?
Northern had it.
Okay, Northern had it. Gotcha.
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
Well, they still have it.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before Randall went back to Australia in 2017, he was actually the instructor.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
He went back in, you said 17? Mm-hmm. And did he end up stuck there for a bit?
Yeah, for like 5.5 years.
Yeah, he told me that.
It was more than a bit.
Yeah.
We thought it would be like 6 months, and then we could reapply for his, P1 visa, and things had changed and the qualifications for the visa had changed. And, our government wasn't the easiest to get into legally. Unfortunately, illegally, yes. It was very easy to get in here, but it took 5.5 years. Four and a half of those we were married. So I flew down in 18 and we got married and then reapplied to get him back here, and it still took 4.5 years.
That is crazy to me.
Well, I thought it sucked.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So were you two, was he involved in the shop at that time?
Yes.
And then he goes back and now he's stuck there. Mm-hmm. So then you're back running the shop solo. Mm-hmm.
You learn what you can do and what you can't do.
Wow, just wild.
You when you're given something like that, it builds character, and you find out that you're capable of a lot more than you thought you were. Mm-hmm. Now I look on it and it was like, yeah, no big deal. But day to day, it kind of stunk.
Oh, I bet.
But then, social media, the way it is now, I mean, you could talk on the phone and do video chats, and so it wasn't horrible. And all his family was there, so he got to spend time with his grandkids and become grandpa.
Sure.
And, that was important. So, again, like I say, everything always happens for a reason.
Yeah. So some positives came from it.
So there's positives. Yeah.
And you figured out you could run it solo.
Yeah, I had help.
Which you had been.
So I had people that helped me out and spent the time there and got through it. And yeah, it's all good.
Do you do any classes at Straight Line that would be focused just on bringing in women into the shop?
I've never done how they have becoming an outdoor woman.
Yeah.
I've never done anything like that. We used to have a lot of kids programs, but that was pre-COVID. And then COVID kind of really ruined a lot of things. Yep. And you tried to get kids classes up and running again. And it's sort of been a struggle. I think we're probably at that time now where parents are maybe looking for something for their kids to get into.
Yep.
But there's a big difference in how kids relate now because of COVID. You see a lot of kids that are really good around adults.
Yep.
But not good around their age group, which is unfortunate. They can't interact verbally or face to face with their age group because everything has become.
Give them a phone.
Phones. Yeah.
They can communicate through text and I don't know, what is it? Snapchat, Mark?
Snapchat.
Yeah. I think kids, that's a big tool, right? For communication for kids.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you find that the interpersonal skills for kid to kid, you feel like it's different
not
than it had been?
Not as good as it used to be.
Yeah. Not as honed because they're not doing it as much.
Because they're not doing it as much.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. So right now, not really any classes for women or the youth program or youth classes.
No.
When you tried to spin it back up, was that 21 or when was it?
21, it was right after COVID because, like I said, we had it really good before COVID. I mean, we had an advanced group of kids and we had an intermediate group of kids. And
what age ranges?
Advanced. It was based on their skill level. So if they were advanced, they were in this group. So I mean, we had kids that were say 16 and under, and we've started kids, 6 years old, 5 years old. Mm-hmm. You can only do it for a short period of time, and then they lose interest.
Sure.
So you gotta make it fun and.
Yep.
But it was good then. I mean, we used to take our advanced kids out to the outdoor range and let them shoot outdoors. We'd close early on a Tuesday and go to the outdoor range and let them shoot different distances. And they seemed to really like it. Yeah.
Where was the outdoor range? Was that your place?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's great for kids to get into stuff like that as early as possible.
I think so.
I think it's fantastic. And not from a hunting perspective, just from developing a different skill.
Just developing a different skill or, being social with the other people that are also in the group.
Yep.
Learning skills, learning to listen.
Yep.
Learning to apply what you're trying to, get across to them.
Yes.
I think all that is important.
Yeah. Being challenged by something that, especially if you're young and you've never done this before, you're not going to walk up with a bow and stick every arrow in the bullseye, right?
No. Wait, there is, and I'm sure you probably see it with biking, that somebody might have I call it a natural ability, or, maybe they're more coordinated, or they just take off in it right away and you don't have to spend as much time on the fundamentals of it. There are some people that have great hand-eye coordination and seem to take to archery, like that. And then you have some that it's they're hitting their head against a brick wall because they're not, whether they're, more into their head and they're really trying to consciously work on it instead of letting things happen subconsciously. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's different types of people that can gravitate to it for sure. But I like it just from a standpoint of it's another skill you can learn. You have to be diligent in practicing and being consistent with it. And on average, most people aren't going to be shooting consistently good without putting in the time.
Well, you have to put in the time. Otherwise, is it worth it?
Well, exactly. But I mean, I think that's a big thing that is missing, now for a lot of people, and not just kids, is they don't want to put the time into becoming good at something.
They don't want to put any effort in.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, when we started shooting, when Cable and I started coming over to the range in January after he got his bow, to me, it's exciting because it's like, okay, now we're in this new environment. We're doing something new, which, for me, I did it 25 years ago, but to him, it's totally brand new.
Sure.
Never has done this. And I just look at it like, oh man, this is going to be great because it's going to be something we're going to be forced to have to kind of dig into and dedicate ourselves to it to get good at it. So I look at it as but I don't care so much about the outcome or the bullseye. I love the process. I love showing up and having to do it, and then having the dedication to that process create the result that you would desire to have.
So that's really good that you're focused on the process. So in the course of your lifetime, you've figured out to focus on the process, not the outcome. Mm-hmm. So the biggest difference between you and Cable, is that he's focused on the outcome.
Exactly, 100%.
And so you can see it when he's shooting.
Yes.
If the arrow doesn't go where he wants, and it's the body language thing all over again. Yes. Hey, well, that didn't work the way I want. Instead of, internalizing it and figure out, okay, well, why didn't that? What do I do? And you see kids today get frustrated right away.
Yes.
I want to be perfect.
Yes.
Do you know what it takes to be perfect at something?
Right.
It's not just picking up a bow and shooting it for the first time. And now I'm disgusted because I didn't hit what I wanted to. So then a lot of people quit.
Yep.
Instead of going, let's put realistic goals in there. And let's work on the process to get there. Let's enjoy the journey, and I'm going to learn a little bit, and get better and better and better, instead of just being frustrated because it didn't go the way I wanted it. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be perfect.
No. I mean, how many hours, right, to master something? What is it? They say 10,000 hours to master something?
So I can watch other sports, and it doesn't matter what other sport. And I can look at the individual and I can appreciate, whether they win or lose, how much effort they have put into being at the level that they're at now. I can appreciate
for sure
where they've come from. And it isn't, like if you're watching the Olympics, and you're watching gymnastics or even, basketball, you can appreciate how much time and effort and sweat and agonizing that they've put in to get to the level that they're at now. I think a lot of people lose track of what it takes to be good at something.
And has that appreciation that you have for what others do in other sports come from your experience of what it's taken to become good at?
Yeah, I'm okay.
But is that what makes it relatable for you?
Well, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be better than okay if you're over in Germany representing Team USA.
Yeah,
Come on now.
It only happened once. So the weirdest thing for me is because I figure I'm nobody. Hi, I'm just this person from the UP that's going to this shoot. And the eye opener for me was I was in a shoot off for nationals, and I had people watching me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, why are you watching me? Because you don't, I never equated to being somebody to watch.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the opposite of what most people are aspiring for now?
Well, I think so. And I'm like, holy crap, they're actually watching me, mm-hmm. or they're rooting for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, so for me, that was a huge eye opener. So you can never think that people aren't aware of where you are in your ability. Eye-opening for me.
That moment, you mean? Mm-hmm. That experience?
That experience.
Interesting. So you're very humble about how well you shoot, which is good. And I haven't even seen you shoot yet. I don't think I've seen you shoot. Well, now I'm going to need to see you shoot.
So, and you can have good days and you can have bad days, for sure.
What are you attached to? You'd mentioned, the way I described it, that I seem to be more attached to or focus on the process and not the outcome. Is that where you're at? I mean, do you love the process? Do you love just putting marks on the target? Just doing it, and then that has led to consistent results?
For me, it's a challenge between subconscious and conscious.
Okay. But meaning what?
I have to rely on my background in shooting and not consciously allow my head to get into the game. So it's mental. For me, it's 100% mental because I know how to shoot.
Fundamentally, you mean?
Fundamentally.
Okay.
Yeah, I know how to shoot. And it's, I think one of the worst things in the world you can do when you're competing is oh, man, I wonder when I'm going to miss. Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be right now. Yeah, right. you just can't do that. It's like, we had talked about it. It's like when you're riding in the woods and there's a tree, don't look at the tree.
Right.
Because you're going to hit the tree.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. As soon as your conscious mind gets in there and starts to say, well, you're doing really good. I wonder when the wheels are going to fall off. Well, it's going to be now.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to get through that.
And how do you?
Still haven't figured it out yet. Some days I'm good. Some days I'm not so good. Some days I'm like, geez, Shelley, dummy, what do you why shoot like you're supposed to instead of, I shot outdoor nationals one year and I was so mad because I had two targets that in my mind were targets that I should clean. Mm-hmm. They were 40 yards, I should get a 20 on that. And they were back to back. And I shot 18s on both of them. And I was like, mad. I'm like, and that was the start of the competition. And you have 28 targets to go. And I shot, and we had 5 targets left to go. And you don't get into somebody's head when you're shooting. That's just, to me, that's wrong. So this girl said to me, it's like, oh my God, you're shooting really well. I'm like, why would you say that to me? Did you, all I'm focused on is what I did in the beginning. Hey,
sure.
And she's like, no, you're shooting really good. And I'm like, shut up. That's just screwing with me. Hey.
So her saying something, is it her saying something, or is it her telling you you're shooting good but you feel like you're not shooting good?
I felt like I was not shooting good, and I felt like she was doing like a head screw.
Okay. Running some mind games.
Mind games.
And is that a thing in archery?
Oh my God. That's a thing in everything. Okay. Come on.
Okay. All right.
Everything. And I got done and I had shot the best score I ever had. And to this day, I struggle I'm trying to find that feeling because I couldn't have told you that I was shooting the best I've ever shot. All I was doing was putting every arrow in the middle, just shooting every bit. And so you weren't consciously thinking about what you're doing. You're looking at the spot and you're shooting your arrows in the middle because you're mad. Mm-hmm. That's the best I've ever shot.
So that backfired on her.
It did. Yeah. But what a great experience. And I think that's what drives you to keep doing it. The same as, I'm sure people bike racing get that thrill that, well, next time I could do a little bit better. Or, they did really good at this race and didn't really realize it because they were just riding their bike. Mm-hmm. It wasn't win or lose. They were just riding their bike. Mm-hmm. And they ended up doing well. Mm-hmm. So you want to repeat that.
Yeah, you want to repeat that, re-experience that feeling, whatever the feeling is.
Whatever the feeling is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at our events, with the way they're positioned, it's probably, I would think, and this is just my guess, but I think what people come back for a lot of times is either the challenge, because they know that they'll be legitimately challenged regardless of what event we put on, or the sense of community you feel. The
community.
The togetherness.
Yes.
Yeah. Like just that.
Because you're in this group of all like-minded people.
Yes.
And isn't that a great feeling?
It is. And like everybody's struggling in one way or another, and it's shitty or it's not, but you're together.
Right.
And, it's interesting because it's easy to get in your head sometimes. I've heard people tell me this, like people that have quit. This goes back to the whole head game thing. Now, I don't think that people are necessarily doing this as a head game tactic on the courses, but I've heard people say, in retrospect, I regret so deeply quitting. And they can pinpoint the moment they decided to quit. And countless people have told me that pinpoint moment coincided with running into a negative person. Like they were okay, like they were hurting, but then they ran into some negative dude who's like, fuck this, I'm quitting. I'm going home. These guys can kiss my ass. And then they adopted that mindset and they quit.
Yeah, I think that's true.
It happens.
Absolutely.
And I like that dude, I'm using the dude as an example, like when he was expressing this feeling to the other person, I don't think he was trying to get the guy to quit. He was just genuinely like done with this, over it, shared it. And then the other guy, it was like a contagion. It just poisoned his mind.
But isn't part of the reason why you do something like that because everybody else is like-minded? Not the negative part, but the positive part.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to assume you bike race.
Well, not anymore, but I did.
But you did. Why?
Sure. For me, I actually have never cared about going to the podium. It's for me, when I first got into it in 09 or 10, whenever it was in response to having my third back surgery. So I couldn't, as part of my recovery, I couldn't lift. The doctor's like, lifting's out.
So you got to find something else.
You got to do something else. Okay. So my wife actually bought me a bike. So I started riding. And then from there, it's turned into this.
Sure.
It kind of went nuts.
Right.
But for me, it's always been about how can this activity make me better? And then at a certain point after it helped make me better and recover from that back surgery, it started to unlock things for me personally I'd never experienced. So then it became, well, how can I share this with other people? Because more people deserve to have an opportunity and access to this because this is pretty fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. So that's how that played out. But, I think, so going back to the event and like negative people that you run into within the
community.
Within the community, I also think that is part of the challenge.
To overcome that.
You have to be able to overcome it.
Or not listen, or not let it affect you.
Yeah. So the guy I'm thinking about who, the one there's more than one, but the one story that stands out is Matt from way back in like 18 or 19. He ran into a guy and he decided to quit because this guy kind of got in his head. And then in retrospect, it was gut-wrenching regret because he's like, why did I do that? How did I like lose my mind? So he mailed me this long, funny, heartfelt letter with his tokens he had collected and just kind of like telling the story and coming clean and being like, I can't believe I'm a quitter. Mm. And then he asked me, he said, I'm coming back and I'm finishing. Just please bring my tokens to the finish line for me. I want to come get them next year. So he came back and he did finish and I gave him the tokens back.
Nice.
But that was part of his journey, was running into that dude.
But then you look at, you can be a firm believer of everything happened for a reason. So, he's got this story to tell and came back to a sport that, he quit at. Mm-hmm.
Do you think, so I'm curious, because you said that a couple of times, that everything happens for a reason. What if it doesn't?
Well, I just like to think I'm a positive person, so I like to think that it does. And you just may never know what the reason was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not arguing with you. I think that I take a different approach to it.
Okay.
I think the world is wildly, sometimes just fucking unyielding random, and bad shit really happens. And then it becomes a game of how are you going to adapt to this?
How you're going to deal with it.
And turn it into a positive.
But that, in your mind, so that random stuff that's bad and you go through it makes you into who you are today. Mm-hmm. So
it's the same end result.
Was it really random?
Yeah. Well, maybe not. I think bad stuff happens. Inexplicable.
How do you explain some of the bad stuff that happens? I mean, it's just I look at it as there's evil in this world.
Sure.
And that's why some of the bad stuff happens.
Absolutely.
And then how you deal with it defines who you are and what you are.
Mm-hmm. What you leave behind.
What you leave behind.
Yeah, the influence that you have on others around you.
Right.
Which is a big one. You know, even if we could have more people more cognizant of how their energy and actions and words impact others, it might shut down social media.
Oh, social media is hugely ugly.
But I think a lot of people are actually unaware of the impact that the lasting impact they have on people. Or they don't care. Or they don't care.
I don't think I think some people don't care. But I think other people's are blind to the influence that they have on other people. You know, I look at Facebook, hey, and I used to share things that I thought were funny and then I'd get, were you talking about me? I'm like,
yeah.
Not everything is about you.
Yep.
You know, sometimes it's just because it was funny.
Right.
So then you stop doing that because you don't want people to. Social media is hard because you could be laughing while you're writing something or posting it, and then somebody reads it and they take it heartfelt as something else. And I think as a society, we've really become that, which I don't think is good.
Well, to that point, a big piece of trying to get this podcast up was driven by the fact that I've spent 11 years in social media.
Yuck.
And I feel like what I'm learning is it's definitely an effective tool, and there's an end to the means or a means to the end, but it's missing a lot. Like, we deliver a lot of messages through our events and through 906 Adventure Team, or I write a lot of stuff in social media.
Sure.
But what it leaves, not a lot of people, and I won't even say most people, but what it leaves some people is the ability to read what I write and project tone and intent and body language into it and take it the way they want to take it.
The way that they want to take it.
Yes. And then they try to paint a picture of me in a certain way based on the way they want to interpret what I write. Whereas if we're in a setting like this and you and I are just talking, or us and anybody, there's a lot more that you can communicate.
True.
Than just in a text
than a written word.
Yes, 100%.
Written word can be interpreted any way you want.
Right.
To
100 different ways.
History.
Yes.
I mean, everything, even something as stupid as the Bible. I mean, we can, this group can interpret it this way. This group can interpret it that way. And that might not have been the intention at all. And so yeah.
So more of this.
One-on-one live, you can tell by my tone of voice when I believe something wholeheartedly, and I unfortunately get sort of excited about it. And
why unfortunate? It's a good thing to be excited.
It bleeds out. So that's more important than somebody interpreting what you say the wrong way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always. So in 28 years running a shop, what have you learned? I mean, probably more than one thing, obviously, but you're running a business, working with the public.
No, can't say that. I'm lucky because the people that I deal with are like-minded in a small aspect of it. You know, they all have archery. That's, you know, something that they're interested in or want to learn, or so it's easy to be passionate about it, and they can take that, you know, into themselves also. So I was going to say the public sucks, but you know, my public is different.
Yeah.
You know, because everybody's there for a reason. So it's interesting. When I was downtown Ishpeming, we used to have Phelps when Phelps was on 3rd Street, the school.
Yep.
The gym teacher used to bring their kids down twice a 6 weeks for archery. And a lot of times he would tell me, he's like, well, you know, this student isn't great, you know, and might be troublesome. And what I would find is, because it's an individual sport, and if you just spent that little bit of time, they could find out that that was something that they could be good at.
Yeah.
And it gives you a sense of self-worth. And those were the kids that I never had problems with. How great is that?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
It's just, so that's a really cool thing. Or having somebody that comes in that, you know, they have ADHD or, you know, something, and you can spend that little bit of time and they can find out that, you know what, I could do this.
Yep.
And then it's something that they can excel at or be happy with, or how great is that to be able to give somebody that?
Yeah. When you said that just now, it made me think of, because obviously we've got youth programs, and for whatever reason through the years, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens frequent enough to, when you start talking about like the gym teacher, kind of giving you like the background on a couple of kids that might be considered like troublemakers. I've had people reach out and, you know, they want to give me the down low on a child that's coming in the bike club. And I always wonder, what's the actual motivation? Because
For doing that?
For doing it.
I don't know.
I don't like it. I don't understand it. Because my take is,
you start with a clean slate.
yeah. You come
and now
in.
you've tried to influence me in a negative way about somebody that
I don't even know.
Right.
And it's a kid.
Right.
Like, particularly for kids, but just in general for adults and just people, I'd say that a person's behavior in one environment will not necessarily directly correlate the same behavior to different environments. And I think that I see this with kids is, if you get too many kids in that position where they're misunderstood or not liked by a person, adult, a teacher, and they keep sharing that story like, hey, let me give you a little heads up on Eddie here. He's kind of a pain in the ass. That becomes that kid's story.
Right.
Because nobody else is willing to see Eddie with a clean slate.
They've constantly said, you're not any good.
Yeah.
They've constantly been, you know, you're trouble. You're
this, you're that.
Yep. You know, so that becomes but if they get into an environment where you don't know,
right, then
you can give them something that maybe they're not getting anywhere else.
100%. I want to not even judge. I want to see the kids based on what I see.
Yes.
Not on what I'm told and expected to see. Because if I'm told and I buy into what I'm told, I might see it and it's not even there.
Right.
But I'm told it's going to be.
Or you might not put, sometimes you have to put a little extra effort into somebody. But you can usually tell right away. But man, if you can give somebody something to think good of themselves for, maybe that's the only thing that they have, then you've done your job.
I would bet that cable has kind of a reputation for And in fact, I know this. I know that the teachers have communicated this up through the ranks through the years, that he's a talker and he's a hard time sitting. He doesn't like sitting around. He's social. And if there's been, a behavioral issue, that has been the thing that gets reported. And it's like, I get it. We work with him through it. He has a personality.
Sure.
He's a mover. He doesn't want to sit around. Like, it shouldn't be a negative thing. It shouldn't be a knock to his character, or a problem. But I think they want him to just sit in a desk and shut up. Which
they don't want to have to find a way to deal with it.
Yeah. He likes to move around, so it's just the way it is. You're not going to take it from him.
All kids are different.
Yeah, they are. 100%. 100%. How many kids right now? Do you have a lot of kids that shoot with parents? And if not, how do we change that? Like, would you be set up to be able to do more with kids if they were?
Yeah, my problem is certain times of the year.
Yeah.
There's, unfortunately, so my slowest time would be now.
Yep.
But we live in the UP where there's winter, 8 months out of the year. Right. So now everybody is doing outdoor stuff. So nobody, typically wants to come in and do anything. But this is my best time frame. It's harder obviously fall is just a horrible time to try to do anything because of how busy we are. Yep. And then, November, December would be good. And then January through, April, we're running leagues. So, my range free time is very limited because I have people in there shooting all the time. Yep. So it's difficult to find right now a spot to be able to do more with kids.
You could do it outside though, right?
I could do it outside.
If there was a possibility to do it this time of year outside.
Yep.
That wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing.
No.
How much
things that, I want to do. I mean, do we want to do more stuff with kids? Yeah, but it's over the years we've gotten busier and busier. Yeah. And so your free time is less and less. I'd like to do something outdoors with veterans. Mm-hmm. But it's like, okay, find a weekend. Find a weekend that's free.
Weekends are tough.
Yeah. So then it's like, okay, well, what about during the week? Because I think it'd be great to get some veterans in that to give it a go, because usually you can figure out a way that anybody can shoot. Randall just worked with a guy that's a veteran that had an eyesight problem. Something hit him in his dominant eye, and he's right-handed, and he shot archery all his life, and that's his thing, and he wants to do it again. And so we actually switched him over to shooting right-handed, but anchoring underneath his chin, so he's aiming with his left eye, so he could shoot again. How great is it to be able to give somebody that instead of having them try to figure out, well, how am I going to shoot left-handed when I've done it right-handed all my life?
Right.
So
how cost prohibitive would you say archery is for kids? Like, what's it cost to get into it? If you're going to start a kid off young, 6, 7, 8.
So what I would do, my recommendation is always, we have equipment at the shop, so you bring them up and you let them have a go at it. And I always look at it, I don't want to see a parent buy a bow and then it sits in the closet. To me, that's a waste.
Yeah, it's a waste.
So if your kid bugs you and says, hey, can we go do archery again? Hey, can we go do archery again? Hey, can we go do archery again? Then you can kind of determine, well, maybe it's cost effective to get into it. But depending on what you buy, you can buy a recurve and set everything up on a recurve for under $300. You can get a compound bow. It depends on their size, in the same sort of market. Obviously, like Cable, he's bigger, so he needs a bigger bow, so that, ups your price tag. Mm-hmm. And it just depends on what type of shooting you want to do.
Is there a recommendation? Like, if you're going to start a kid off, would you recommend starting with a recurve, or does it not matter? Like, if you start at a recurve and then go to compound, does that tend to lead to better shooters?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Fundamentals are pretty much still the same.
Okay.
It's just cost effective to start out. But then we have a lot of people that shoot compounds all their life, and they're like, well, I want to buy a recurve because it's fun. Because it's... I find shooting a recurve is a lot less stressful than shooting my compound where I'm trying to be perfect. So recurve, I can just sort of fling arrows and have fun.
Gotcha.
And that's pretty neat. But, it depends on, what movies are out. Mm-hmm. If there's movies out that have recurves in it, man, our recurve sales go up. Because kids then want to do it. Hunger Games was huge. The Hobbit, it wasn't The Hobbit, it was the one before The Hobbit.
Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings was huge because he shot a recurve, a traditional style bow.
That makes sense.
Brave. All those movies made a huge impact on people shooting.
What's the most recent that would have influenced it positively? Is it Brave? I don't even know. It's not Lord of the Rings.
Not Lord of the Rings. I would say probably Brave.
Yeah, it seems like that's been semi-recent.
Yeah.
Am I correct that there's people shooting competitively with the recurve?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even on the local, I've got a guy that competes and he shoots a longbow. He looks at it as therapy. He has some issues. He's a veteran too, and he has some issues with seizures at night. And so for him, shooting a bow is therapy. So he's shooting a longbow, really like poundage longbow, but he comes and shoots competitions and has a ball. Oh my gosh, he went to internationals for the first time this past year and had the most fun, which is totally awesome.
Do you just go to internationals or do you get invited, qualify?
No, you just pay your money like everybody else and get to go.
Okay.
Yep.
There was a guy, I think he's shooting a longbow at Straight Line. Randall said that he's gone to Vegas. Or maybe it's not a longbow, but it wasn't a compound. Does that ring a bell at all?
The guy I was talking about that went to internationals, he's planning on going to Vegas next year.
Maybe it's the same guy then.
Yeah.
It might be the same guy.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple different guys there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's all archery. Mm-hmm. So you don't discriminate.
Yeah. No, I think it's cool. The bows are cool.
Depending on how you get into it, there's traditional, which would be a longbow or a recurve, and then you have like target recurves, which, cost more than like your bow setup. That's what's done in the Olympics. Oh. And then this year, I don't think it's, whenever the next Olympics is, it's out in California, they're going to have compound archery in it. And that'll be like the first time.
Are they?
Yeah, as like a trial. So every once in a while, the host country can put in an event that's not been in there, but then you lose something else because there's only so many events.
Right.
But it'll be a team event. So that was the big, couple of months ago, that was the big buzz going around that it's going to be in there. But those people are going to be the elite of the elite.
Right.
Yeah. But have you ever watched Olympic archery with a recurve? Mm-mm. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh, I bet it is.
Yeah, because they're not shooting 20 yards.
Yeah, what is the distance?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me. It's out there. And they have sights, but they're shooting with fingers. And it's just phenomenal how good they are.
Are we talking like 100 yards?
No, I'm going to say
60?
Yeah.
That's out there.
To not know is bad that I don't know.
It's okay. We won't hold it against you.
Yeah. But it's pretty fantastic to watch. And there's some, you can see it. Because that's going to be a country thing. Because the Olympics, it's country against country, an individual against individual. But Koreans are like awesome.
Really good.
But their dedication is so much different than, our dedication here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the time and effort that they put into is huge compared to what the athletes put in here.
So for somebody who is going to aspire to shoot at the highest competitive level, what do you think is a realistic dedication of time? Dedication of time, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, 15 years, 16 years, 17 years, 18 years, 19 years, 20 years, 21 years, 22 years, 23 years, 24 years, 25 years, 26 years, 27 years, 28 years, 29 years, 30 years, 31 years, 32 years, 33 years, 34 years, 35 years, 36 years, 37 years, 38 years, 39 years, 40 years, 41 years, 42 years, 43 years, 44 years, 45 years, 46 years, 47 years, 48 years, 49 years, 50 years, 51 years, 52 years, 53 years, 54 years, 55 years, 56 years, 57 years, 58 years, 59 years, 60 years, 61 years, 62 years, to that endeavor weekly? I mean, obviously they got to be shooting every day, every week, or maybe not every day, but all the time, every week.
If you look at
like what's it take?
It depends on whether you're shooting compound with release or compound with fingers or recurve with fingers. I mean, shoot fingers takes a lot more dedication and a lot more arrows because you have to perfect, this part of it. Mm-hmm. Whereas with release, it's still, it's hours, but it depends upon the individual, and practice isn't. There's two types of practice. There's just repetitive, I'm just going to fling arrows for, 3 hours. Well, if you're not working on something, then all you're doing is reinforcing stuff that's not correct.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you shoot for 3 hours with no specific goal, you could be reinforcing bad habits.
Bad habits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's when you look at practice, it can't be just, if you're training for something, it can't be just flinging arrows. It's quality over quantity. And then I think the volume or the time depends upon the individual.
Mm-hmm. When I was at camp last weekend, trying to work through the nuance of, what Randall had shared. And I actually, at one point for probably 4 or 5 rounds, set my phone up so I could record.
Sure.
And then I just went and I shot. Like I didn't pay any attention to the phone, just shot. Just keep shooting. And then go back and look and see what I could pick out from. Not like this shot was a good one. It was just looking at how my fundamentals changed from shot to shot to shot.
I think one of the hardest things about archery is that you can't see yourself. Mm-hmm. So at the shop, there's we went to Menards a long time ago and bought 2 closet doors that have mirrors.
Oh.
The whole door is a mirror.
Yes.
And put it on rollers. And before phones were super, super, popular.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that you could roll that so that the person, because you would, if I'm watching you, I'm in your space looking at you, and sometimes it feels like I'm just picking you apart or picking somebody apart.
Right.
And so you try to explain, well, you can't see what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So you're going to ask me for help, then I'm going to look and I'm going to find these things, and then I'm going to tell you this is what you're doing. And a lot of times you get, well, no, I'm not. I'm like, yeah.
Well, yes, you are.
So, if I think about it, is you could take your phone and record. And a lot of times it's draw length. People's draw lengths aren't correct because they've just fit themselves into a bow any way that they could.
Right.
Maybe they went someplace, or maybe it's a hand-me-down bow, or it was their dad's bow and they just picked it up and started shooting. So then you try to explain to them, well, it doesn't really fit you. Well, yeah, it does. And then you show them so that they can see it. Or, you're punching your release, or you're doing this, you're doing that. And if you can show them, then it gets in a little bit better than to say, yeah, this is what you're doing wrong. And it's not wrong until you've been given an option to do it a different way. Right. Then if you choose to go back to the way that doesn't work as well, then you can consider it. I love tape or recording. So when a couple times when we've taken the kids to a basketball tournament, Stacy will record the games. Sure. And we didn't do it after the last tournament. We'll probably do it after the next one. But the first tournament, when we came back, I took one of the games and I had the kids come in. One practice was just watching themselves play. Sure. And I prefaced it ahead. And I said, what I love about this, guys, is you're going to get to watch this game and you're going to get to see yourself. And you're going to get to see that you're doing some of the things or not doing some of the things we're telling you need to do or need to stop doing. My favorite part of watching the film is it doesn't lie. Right. It's right there. It's right there. What you did and didn't do. Yep. And as long as you're willing to sort of objectively take that feedback and then utilize it and improve, we're good. How did it go when they saw themselves? You want to know what the first thing they said was after they're done watching it? This is the first time a coach has ever done this. Huh. And then they said,
we should do this again. They actually really enjoyed it. Now, here's the funny thing on the front end about it. When the kids heard we were going to sit at practice and watch a video,
They moaned and groaned.
Moaned and groaned. Cable came home from school and he's like, yeah, nobody wants to go to practice tonight. They don't want to watch this video. And I said, well, we're going to watch the video. And then after the video, they were like, they really liked it. It was very beneficial.
It would be extremely beneficial.
Yeah, it is. It takes out, like, it's, to me, I think it was disarming in a way that, okay, I can't actually argue with your coach because I'm about to actually watch what I did.
Right.
You know? So sometimes I think even in practice in the moment when we stop play and you go to a kid and you're talking through the nuance of what they did or didn't do, there's a protective mechanism at play that they're going.
No, I didn't.
Right. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I'd actually love to be able to record practice to get to those interactions where, no, I didn't do that. And then be able to go back and play her back and be like, well, did you?
But you're only seeing yourself. You're not seeing the big picture when you're actually playing.
Yes.
So it has to be informative and educational.
Yes.
To be able to see as a group what everybody's doing.
Yep.
You know, it's just like watching Sports Center, you know, in the morning after a basketball game. And you're like, oh my God, yeah, they just stood around like, you know.
That's the big thing that the kids will see in a film session is because Brian, who coaches with me, you know, he says that 90% of the game happens without the ball in your hands.
Well, absolutely.
Which is true.
Yeah.
So you really have to learn, because what kids have the tendency to do is when they don't have the ball, they stand around. So if you stand around when you don't have the ball, then you're standing around 90% of the time.
But if you're watching as a coach, you see that.
Yes.
Right? And then you try to influence and you try to say, well, you know, Johnny, you know, why didn't you do, or why did you just, you know, stand there with your hands in your pocket, you know, instead of going, anticipating, or as an individual player, you wouldn't be able to see that.
True.
As a whole.
Yep. The film is very helpful. We've tried to, another thing we've tried to do with the kids is at the youth level, a lot of times, for whatever reason, maybe this is just a local thing, I'm not sure, they depend on plays to run their offense. Well, the problem is a lot of the schools run the same plays every year. Eventually the plays aren't going to work anymore.
Correct.
Or if a play doesn't work, then they don't know what to do. So we've really actually tried to instill or institute offenses that force you to understand movement. And if this happens, you should do this, filling space on the floor, stuff like that, to get them to actually begin to like think and feel the flow of the game, and to be able to see things and know how to react to them. On that part, I would say actually that's been a lot of fun. It was hard in the beginning because they were accustomed to not being able to think that way freely because they just had to follow a play.
Right.
But now, I mean, we've been doing it for a couple months. It's
getting easier.
Yes. It's not perfect, but you can start to see like flashes of the offense where it's like, oh yeah. Like, you know, you could see, maybe you see Hudson, it's like, he'll make a great backdoor cut. It's like, yes. Like 2 months ago, we weren't doing that.
We weren't doing it.
Yeah.
Everybody was just standing there waiting to see if the ball went in the hoop.
If they didn't have the ball, they were watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you know, what got us to the basketball thing is the film thing, but it's hugely beneficial. And I think you're right. Like when you're getting feedback from somebody, if they're up in your space, depending on the person's personality, that may or may not work. Like I know if some people, if you get right up on them and you're there and you're like talking them through what you're seeing, it's going to be in their head.
So there's a lot of times if you stand up, if somebody's struggling and you stand up, hey, and they're like, well, hey, can you come watch me? I'm doing something wrong. And you go over and watch them and you can't, and it goes right in the middle because they're not thinking about, they're not consciously thinking about what they're doing. They're consciously thinking about me watching them. Mm-hmm. So they're just subconsciously looking at the spot. So it goes well. So all you
Right.
need is for me to just stand here and you'll shoot good. So your video thing is really interesting because I have one younger kid at the shop that his body language, when he makes a shot and it's bad, hey, his body language sucks. Hey. So in my mind, that's reinforcing that sucky shot.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know that he sees it or feels it. So I'm going to record him
Yeah.
and show it to him.
Yeah. This is, hey,
Because
take a look.
we've talked about, being positive and thinking the positive and body language is part of that.
It's a huge part of it.
Don't get frustrated with what you're doing because then it just leads to more frustration and more frustration. So
Yes.
I'm going to video him and show it to him.
The balloon thing you've done with cable.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you've had him shoot at a balloon twice, and both times he's,
The first arrow.
yeah, first arrow hits it.
Yeah. You know why? Because he's looking at the balloon.
Right. The biggest mistake, is it that they get too fixated on the pin? Mm-hmm. And they're trying to put the pin on the bullseye?
On the bullseye.
And then it's moving all over the place.
Yep. The more you look at it, the more it's going to move.
Yeah.
The less you look at it, the more it's going to sit where your eye is looking.
Are you shooting with one eye or two eyes open?
It depends. I shoot with two eyes open, but I'm right-handed and I'm right eye dominant. So there's a lot of cases where you can't do it because somebody is right-handed, dominantly right-handed, but their left eye is dominant.
Yep.
So that creates a problem with both eyes open because you're going to hit like 4 feet to the left.
Got it.
And think that you're aiming, and then that leads to frustration. So, there's different ways to get around it, but a lot of times those people are going to have to close their left eye to shoot.
You know what Randall mentioned to me last week, Thursday or Friday, whatever day it was? Essentially, I don't know how he said it, but he was kind of telling me that I was waiting too long to let the shot go. Mm-hmm. So he said something like, trust yourself, let it go. So I started doing that and then worked on it over the weekend. And I actually think he's right, where for whatever reason, I don't know where this idea came from, but I felt like drop back, anchor, and don't shoot right away. Like, don't rush it. So I was intentionally like holding my release.
Sure.
And I wasn't shooting terrible at 20, but moving back to 30, just 10 yards, it was different.
Different.
And after he said that, I started just more drawn back, anchor, the sight, I'm on the target, let it go, and the arrow goes where it's supposed to go.
Isn't that amazing?
But I've had to actually shorten up just, my time. Like I was literally just, I don't know what the hell I was doing.
Everybody has an optimal aim time. Whatever it is. Some people are different. For me, sometimes I'm unsteady when I first get to full draw, so it might take me a little bit longer to do the relax and then look at the spot. But the longer that you are at full draw and supposed to be looking at what you want to hit,
Yep.
the more your conscious mind will get involved in the shot.
Right.
And you try to then this is what kids do. Hey, they try to be perfect. I'm going to get my pin to sit right on the center of and as soon as you look at your pin, you're done.
Yep.
So you find your pin, put it on the target, and then look at the target. And then execute the shot.
Yep. So far, at least, this might change, but for me, I've found I am on target at the point that I've drawn and I've anchored. I'm typically there. I'm on the target where I want to be. And then if I hang out and like try to aim it, now all bets are off.
Because your subconscious or your conscious mind gets in there and it's like trying to. So for me, I drive above the target and come down because it's harder to pick your bow up to aim at it because you're fighting gravity. Hey,
Yes.
So I'm above the target, and your brain learns, based on where the target is or what distance it is on how high.
Yep.
And so some of the scariest things is as soon as you look through your peep, you're right on the target. Mm-hmm. So then you get that. I'm like, holy crap, that's not supposed to happen that way. I didn't get to, come down and there's so many things about archery that's just fun and learning and trying to conquer and be good at. And yeah.
It's interesting too when you get into like the shop, if you've got, because during the winter there was a lot more people there, often. So like, and this was more when Cable was shooting before I started shooting again. You'd get, and it's great, like different guys are giving him different tips, but they all have a different tip, and some of the tips are in opposition to the other tip.
Sometimes,
not that one's right or wrong, but
Right.
it's just interesting to hear the different takes. Like everything else, people have different takes on it. You talked about how you put it up and bring it down. One of the guys in there talked about actually bringing it up to target. So same theory, I guess, just opposite.
Opposite.
Yeah.
But you're working twice as hard
Yeah.
because you're fighting gravity.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
everybody's got like the nuance, eh?
Yeah, everybody does. Everybody's got an opinion on everything, right?
It's pretty interesting.
I think it's funny because when there's people in there shooting, everybody's a little apprehensive about shooting next to them. And, I try to tell people that archers are the more self-absorbed people going.
Oh, meaning they're not actually looking at you?
They're not looking at you.
Right.
I mean, they're solely focused on what they're doing. So it doesn't matter what's happening around them. That's why we got to be on the ball as, somebody walking down to get their arrows because they forget to look and see that somebody's still shooting because they're not thinking of anybody else but themselves, which probably is bad, but archers are self-absorbed in what they're doing.
I mean, I would assume that's to be a good shooter, that's what you need to do when you're on the line.
You need to block out everything else going around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would think that if you can't, or if you're taking everything that's going around you, then you're taking attention off target.
Correct. So it's easier for me if I'm not at the shop. Like if I go to a big shoot, I'm not paying attention to what anybody else is doing. But if I'm shooting on Friday night when we shoot in the wintertime, I'm aware of what everybody's doing. When I'm supposed to be, looking at my target, I'm aware of, Johnny 5 people down from me that's punching the crap out of his release. And so I need to go and talk to him, when we're done shooting so that he doesn't do that. But I think that just comes from owning the shop.
So during leagues in January to April, are you and Randall shooting league also?
Trying to. Yeah.
And run the shop. And catch Johnny punching the release.
And you try to help everybody because you want everybody to shoot to the best of you were saying that with biking, hey, you don't want to see somebody fail.
No.
You want to see them succeed. And succeeding doesn't mean being top of the tree. It means being the best that you can be. Because we talked about it. There's only one. There's the first. There's first, second, third. Hey, and I hate the fact that people, second is the, first loser. I'm like, it's just a bad way to look at it, And then if you are top of the tree, I mean, everybody wants to, cut you down so that you're not top of the tree, which is unfortunate also. Instead of appreciating what it took for you to get there. So everybody's got to have that goal and work their way towards whatever achievement that they want to get.
Totally agree with that. And I think on stuff like archery and, even if it's firearms, where there's going to be some natural abilities you may have that are a little more better honed, hand-eye coordination, stuff like that. But those are things that you can do where it's less about, were you born fast? Were you born to be able to jump high?
Right.
Like you can come into those things if you just don't have that sort of limited, finite mindset on success. And I'm going to work on me to get better every day.
Right.
And who knows, if you dedicate yourself to doing that, maybe you will become the best. But you became the best because you were dedicated to just incrementally improving yourself.
Set realistic goals.
Yes.
Because, I'm sure you guys talk about that too. I mean, there's stages.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's like enjoy the ride. And then
for us, literally,
everything is, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the valley to be less, each time so that, because you physically can't stay at the top all the time. Mm-mm. I mean, it's not feasible. I don't think that it's feasible, but how far you go down before you come back up again is respectful of your character.
Yes.
Yeah.
For kids on the bike and bike club, that progression is at the beginning of June when they start. Some kids will come into it fairly well experienced, and they'll be able to ride the majority of the features that they end up encountering.
Sure.
But there's going to be a lot of kids, probably the majority of kids, that a lot of their introduction to these different features, this will be the first time. So it's always just kind of always reiterating, the power of yet is what we call it, growth mindset.
Sure.
You can't ride that yet. It's June 9th. It's the first night. You can't ride it yet. Let's talk in July and see how you feel about it. And opening up those opportunities, like, okay, to try it, not have it go well, but just to have that failure as part of the equation of becoming eventually successful. That's been very beneficial for the majority of kids. Opening up the opportunity, like, hey, you don't need to be able to do it now. If you're not ready for that, let's just walk it and talk about it.
Sure.
And maybe you can try it next week or not. We'll wait until you're ready.
We'll wait till you're ready.
And a lot of them, God, I'm not going to say that some kids haven't, left bike club and not done a certain feature, but I feel like when you give them the opportunity to make the choice, and it's not like a football coach yelling at them, screaming at them, eventually, if they have the autonomy to make the choice and the support, and they don't feel like failure is this huge, daunting, bad thing, eventually they'll try. They'll give it a shot. There's nothing better than watching a kid ride something that scared the hell out of them.
Sure.
And then seeing like the surprised look on their face when they clear it and they're like, oh my God, I did it.
Right.
I did it.
Right.
It's like they surprised themselves. That's an awesome feeling.
So it's something they can build on. Mm-hmm. It's gives you a sense of worth. Mm-hmm. Don't we all need a sense of worth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Kids especially.
Being valued, feeling valued.
And I guess that's what I like about individual sports versus the team stuff. Mm-hmm. Because there isn't a perceived notion on what you have to be physically or mentally in order to do it. It isn't, only these people are going to get to play because they're either the somebody or they're the, mm-hmm. So everybody, I'm not going to go for the team because I know I'm going to sit on the bench the whole time. So what are you instilling in that kid that is on the team but never gets to play?
Yeah.
What motivation does he have to become better? So archery, it doesn't matter. Short, tall, heavy, skinny, strong, mm-hmm. weak, old, young. Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. It's you and the bow.
It's you and the bow.
Yeah.
You just get the equipment that fits you, and then you have just as much ability as the next person.
Mm-hmm. And equal opportunity.
And equal opportunity.
Because, on the traditional sport model, what we've talked about for years is, and this is, other people know this too, in the same way that the podium is limiting, so are rosters. Roster sizes for sports.
Sure.
A basketball team generally is only going to take 10 players.
Right.
So you're going to be, in theory, one of the 10 best players that can try out and make the team. So that is also limiting by default for opportunities. Whereas like with archery, if you're willing to show up with your bow, you have to participate.
Right.
Not participating is not an option.
No.
It's the same thing with bike club.
When you look at, if you go to a big tournament and you go to look, and I mean you see all types of people. Do we shoot Vegas? And believe it or not, so Vegas is a pretty big shoot. There's a woman that's an archer that has a seeing eye dog. And her husband sets up a stand for her to shoot that hits the back of her hand at full draw. And she can't see. And she's at an archery event. Which,
yeah, that's awesome.
You don't expect to see a lady the CNI talk
Right.
archery event.
Right.
Matt Strassman, he shoots with his feet. He has no arms. So when you watch him shoot, it's fantastic. Even something as stupid as putting his target up. So we put up our own targets at big shoots. So he's doing it with his feet. He's getting the pins out of the thing with his feet. And so you're going to piss and moan and bellyache about how you shot when you have nothing physically,
Right.
Disabling you. And then here's these people. Get a clue.
Right.
Be thankful for what you have and don't ever say that you can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Shooting with his feet.
Yeah, it's pretty insane to watch. I mean, it's just the dedication and he's going to find a way.
Yeah.
He's going to find a way to do it.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Not having arms isn't going to make any difference to him.
Right. You guys have quite a few people that come to the shop that travel from a distance, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
I feel like
to Ishpeming, everything is pretty much a travel.
Yeah, but people are traveling to the shop to either get the bow worked on, buy a bow, shoot,
get help, or whatever.
That is something that I picked up on while I've been there, because I think a couple times either you or Randall have asked somebody where they came from, and it's been not Nagani, not Marquette,
right?
I think somebody might have come from the Sioux.
We get people from we get people from the Sioux. We get people from all over the UP.
Yeah.
We get a lot from the Keweenaw. Yeah.
That's another cool thing, though. I think that's worth noting, because with the, talking about archery as a individual activity that's done within a community, it's so you don't have that polarization of, Hematites, miners. What's Marquette now? God, I don't even remember.
Oh, it's not Redmond, right?
No.
That was a whole
I don't know.
thing.
I can't keep track of what it is. But anyway, my point is, you don't have the team polarity in the shop.
No.
People are all individuals from different walks of life, from different communities, different towns. They're traveling to you to be part of a community that they're not even close to.
Right.
There's something to that. There's something to that. I mean, I'm not saying that team sports are bad, but there's there's some polarization that happens there that isn't positive. Also, it's telling if you got people traveling from the Sioux to be part of the shop. It's pretty awesome.
Well, it's a reflection on maybe you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Just a healthy atmosphere, healthy community, healthy place to be. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, I think it's the difference between, you can go anywhere. I mean, you can buy your stuff anywhere. You can buy your stuff online.
Well, now more than ever.
Yeah, you can, go to Lancaster. Anybody can buy anything, but what you're not going to find a place that's selling it to you that's more passionate than we are about the sport. And it's not about selling, it's about the individual doing the best that they can with whatever they have.
Yeah.
I've never upselled anybody. Somebody comes in with something that's older, can you make it work? I'm like, yeah. I started out with a bow that was old. There's you don't have to, and you can't buy being good.
Right.
To a degree. If you don't have the fundamentals, then having, this bow over this bow down here isn't going to make you a better shooter. It's not the bow. Yeah. It's the person behind the bow.
Yes.
So, and I think it took a while for people to understand that. And I want, both Randall and I want everybody to shoot to the best of their ability and enjoy the sport as much as we do and get as much out of it as we have. Same thing, give back to, give somebody something that they can have the enjoyment that you've gotten out of the sport.
Do you think that it would be fair to say that you sell bows, but you're not necessarily there just to sell a bow?
Now, obviously, I want to sell a bow because that's how I need to stay,
Sure.
Doing what I want to do. But I don't care where you buy your bow. I've got some people that, I didn't want you to look at me because I bought my bow at, this place. And I'm like, I don't care.
You don't feel that they have to have the nicest bow either.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So, I mean, there's some of that, I think that's good. I think that's a positive thing in the bike world. I think sometimes that there's too much emphasis. I personally believe there's too much emphasis put on the bike.
Well, what is if you're going to get like the bike today, what is it going to cost you?
I don't know, probably $12,000. What do you think? More?
Yeah, the pros are riding $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 bikes that have no motors on them. Well,
which is crazy.
15,000.
But the average person, if they were to have that bike versus this bike, would that bike make them a better rider?
Not at a world-class level.
No.
It's about the person on the bike.
It's about the person on the bike.
And
I've seen people over the course of the years go, well, I'm not shooting as good as I want, so I'm going to buy this target bow. And then they buy that target bow, and then, a year later they quit because it didn't get, or it's always the bow's fault, or it's the release's fault, or my arrows are bent, or it's not taking control of knowing what's wrong, and it's usually the individual. Can be. Sometimes there's equipment, but
sure. But dedication, commitment to the process, willing to commit to the process. There's a lot that goes into it.
There is.
That supersedes the equipment. Because, we've seen people at events for 906, they'll come in on some bike they've had since the 70s, and they're doing Margie Gessick with the guys on the brand new carbon $15,000 bike, and they're finishing. Sometimes faster.
Right, BMX bike.
Yeah, Kiko, the guy I had on a few weeks ago, he rides a BMX bike, and he did Margie on it, which is ridiculous. It's just totally insane. But it's proof that
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't matter.
There's a preconceived notion that you have to have the best of everything in order to succeed, and it's not being realistic. That's not admitting that maybe there's something in you that's not working as it should, or it's at fault, and that's the reason why you're not.
Right. It distracts you from what's most important. That's what you got inside.
Yeah. Or you don't want to admit it.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
Here's a question I want to make sure not to forget to ask. So in Michigan, and maybe this is nationally, but I'm just going to talk about Michigan because I have different contacts with the DNR, and we are normally talking about our events and stuff, but it inevitably happens when we're talking about hunting. It seems like in Michigan that, hunting or fishing or both have sort of declined. How have you seen, or have you seen, how have things changed in the shop, I guess, over the years? Do you think you see less people hunting, or do you think it's the same?
I think where they hunt has changed.
Oh, interesting. Meaning?
And so my clientele, I would say the majority of them hunt on a state. I still think that they hunt here.
Yeah.
But their focus is out of state.
Okay.
Whether it's, a lease in Wisconsin or Iowa, or, whether it's going out west for elk or antelope or mule deer, or that's their focus. And then if they have time, they'll do a little bit of hunting here.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's driven that? Any idea?
I think our deer herd isn't like what it used to be.
Oh, okay. That would make sense. That is word on the street.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then what is like it used to be?
True.
Everything changes.
True.
So there's, the crossbow opened up the more people are hunting. So is that the reason? Not necessarily, because I think the decline was previous to that. Is it our winters? Yes. Is it, car hits, yes. Is it habitat loss? Because we're more populated. Have they lost some of their natural habitat? Is it wolves? It depends on who you talk to, because that's the problem. But I don't think it's the only problem.
No.
Is it management? Probably some of it is management and how it's done. Is it, the amount of deer that you can shoot? Yes. Is it, I think all those factors contribute to it. Is it, people going to the deer yards in December and just, slaughtering deer because it's that's where they are.
Right.
It's like fish in a barrel.
Yep.
It's not, in my mind, it's not fair chase. And so all those things contribute to a smaller herd.
Yeah.
And, how do you fix that? I think that's the main struggle all the time between the different groups, sportsmen's groups or, UP Whitetails and those organizations and the DNR. Is it the DNR officers' fault? No, because they're just doing their job like everybody else. You've got to look someplace higher up the food chain. It's not the officer that's, patrolling. It's somewhere higher up, and they need to look at that.
Yeah, I think on the hunting thing, especially like if you look at deer herd and if it's not where it used to be, and like you just said, it's not one thing.
Wow.
Right? There's probably 20 or more things that are all
Factors
contributing.
that contribute.
So I think that, and then let's say it's 30 things. There's 30 things contributing to a decline in the deer herd. And those 30 things are probably somehow impacted or changed by different entities or groups, right? So there's a bunch of different groups and people that would play a part in those 30 things, which means you need all those. If it's going to get better, then you need to collectively look at all of this
all of it together,
which sometimes can be hard. But I mean, if we could just agree, this isn't all about hunting, but if we could just agree, like, okay, all these groups that are helping to manage or making decisions that impact the deer herd, if we can just all agree that a healthy, vibrant deer herd is a good thing,
right?
Then let's work toward that to figure out what each of us can do to get closer to that.
Right.
That can be tough though sometimes.
That's asking a lot of people to work together towards a common goal, which would seem like it should be very, very simple and that they'd want to do that. But unfortunately, there's personalities and egos that get involved.
Yeah.
And this group is going to say no because I don't agree with this group. And that seems to be the problem everywhere.
Yep. More and more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does hold us back for sure.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
It is. It's not looking out for the best of the deer herd. It's my interests are most important.
Do you think, how much of an impact have influencers had on archery or the sport in general? Any feel for that?
What do you mean?
There's just, the guys I'm thinking of are probably more, they're not in the competitive.
I mean like Fred Bear or names like that.
Well, the more current people who are in social media, hunting or giving advice on. I'm curious how they're influencing sales and different trends in the community, if at all. And maybe we don't see it up here. I'm not sure.
You do. Oh yeah. There's, so it would be, and I'm not. This isn't my thing, hey? So this is a total new experience to me. But people at work will listen to different podcasts or this person or this person or this person. And does that influence them? Yes, 100%. The downfall that I see to it in some instances is not everybody is at the same level. So this person, for example, is here. Yep. Okay, and so he's talking about what he's doing, but the person that listens is in their range of, expertise down here.
Right.
Nothing against him.
Yeah.
He's just not traveled yet. He's not experienced enough. So what works for him maybe the wrong thing to say to this guy right now.
Right.
Hey, it's not the important thing that he or she should be focusing on. And so that sometimes is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to put it, because, really, like, if a guy's up here and he's hunted for 30 years and now he's an influencer and he's giving advice on social media, he's put in the time to get there, or she's put in the time to get there. And those things won't necessarily apply to somebody that's at a different point in the process of evolution.
Right. So
Yeah,
that's the hard thing. So, like when somebody at the shop gives somebody else that's a new shooter advice, and so, take it with a grain of salt, but it may not be appropriate for them at this point in time.
Right.
When you first start shooting, there's a million things that we go over. I mean, hand position, drop, what you're looking at, doing this, doing that, doing that. And you can't focus on all of those on every shot. So pick something.
Yep.
Pick something, and then today, this is what I'm going to focus on. And then, but keep all those other things in the back of your mind. So as that first one becomes easier, we can go, okay, well, now I'm going to focus on this.
Yep.
I don't expect you to be perfect right off the get-go, and I don't expect you to try to remember everything that I said. It's a learn as you go.
Yeah.
But you're at least, oh, well, now I remember why they told me that, because now I can focus on that. And that's the problem with people listening to YouTube videos, or not everybody's at the same level. And the person that's giving it has no idea, the people that are listening to it, what level that they're at.
Right. True. Yeah, I remember one time this winter we were over at your place, and I just happened to mention the cable in passing, like, hey, do you ever look at your bubble? It was just an innocent comment, because I noticed.
Like, what bubble?
Right. His bow was like this all the time. And I'm like, so that's what prompted it. And he's like, what bubble? And I said, well, the bubble right there. And he's like, oh, no, I've never looked at that. And then we talked about it for a minute. But then it was too much information for him at that point, right? So now he started looking at the bubble and trying to line up the shot, and then he's like, I cannot pay attention to the bubble, Dad.
Right.
So to your point, not the right thing at the right time.
No, because otherwise you spend too much time doing this, doing this when you're supposed to be focusing on there. Or it's somebody's focusing on their release here. So if you're focusing on your release goes off, then you're not looking at the target. So then you're not aiming.
Yep.
So now we've taken, aiming out of the equation, and we're just focused on this, and then we suck. And then our body language is like, oh my God, I can't believe and it's easy to then get frustrated or mad about how you're shooting. So then you try harder.
Yep. Archery
is the one sport I believe that you can't try harder at and be successful.
Explain that. What do you mean by that?
You can't go, well, I'm going to aim better, or I'm really going to, focus on my dot or my pin being on the target. So, or like golfing, I'm going to swing as hard as I can. Well, that typically doesn't work either. Right. Hey, so it's, I always said that I feel like there's a zen to archery, and you have to be brain dead, and not think about all those things, so that the only focus that you're on is the end where my arrow is going to go. And then everything else just kind of works subconsciously.
I've been rifle hunting, majority of my life.
Sure.
And for me, the difference going back to shooting a bow was I don't feel a connection to the gun physically. But as soon as I started shooting again, it's like something the best way to put it is I feel it when I'm on the line, and I think because it feels more physical, where you got the exhale, you got the draw, you're anchoring. Physically, I just feel like there's more physical elements to it. And for whatever reason, it puts me in a different spot than when I've been deer hunting with a rifle. There's a different connection to it. If I can figure out how to better articulate it, I will.
You have to connect with the target. And so what you have here has to become part of you. Because with a gun, with a scope, with a rifle, I mean, you're just putting the crosshairs on the target. You're not connecting to you're looking at the crosshairs and putting it, okay, there, and then squeezing the trigger.
Right.
Whereas you have to be connected to everything that you're doing here. Anybody can squeeze a trigger.
Yeah, there's something to it.
Well, yeah.
And even just at the release, when you watch that arrow go to the target, it's just different. And then you hear that thwack.
Seems like there's a lot more dynamic mechanics involved with it. I mean, you're on your feet, you're drawing your leading arm, and you're drawing your back arm, and you've got your head in the equation. Your whole body's really doing the pulling that trigger.
Yeah, there's just something to it. It's different. It's just different. Not saying better or worse. It's different.
It's just different.
Yeah.
And it's relatively silent.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely another component, It's, just that. I mean, the only sound is, depending on what you're using, the release, and then maybe swearing.
When you think about it, it's like, so if you're shooting with a rifle and you're like, well, the gun shot it. I shot it with my gun, the gun hit where it was supposed to. When you look at archery, it's like, well, I hit where I was supposed to. It's a more of a versus something doing it. Because, I mean, you could set the gun on a tripod on a table and anybody can come around and squeeze the trigger and get it to go where you need to. Whereas you can't do that with a bow. It has to become part of you.
That's what I was going to say, is the rifle feels like it's a tool that you're using separate from you.
Right.
The bow feels like an extension of you. You're part of it.
When somebody gets a crossbow, I always tell them that it's a very effective harvesting tool. But
yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it.
But because you're not going to go out in the backyard and shoot it for an hour. Because you're going to do it and you're going to shoot it and you're like, well, it hits where I want.
Right.
I'm going to go down and pull the arrow and I'm going to squeeze it again and it hits in the same hole.
Yep.
So there isn't anything to work on.
Right.
There isn't, well, I'm done. Whereas with bow, if you hit the same hole, then you're done too, because you've done something that's really good. But you're always striving to do better, get that better group, get your arrows more consistent.
I haven't shot a crossbow, but I'm assuming just from looking at them, they're similar to a rifle, but not a rifle.
They're more similar to a rifle, but they don't have the same capabilities as a rifle.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't, the physical nuance of shooting a compound bow or whatever, longbow, it's totally different. Because they're just pulling the bolt back, right?
Right.
Point.
Squeezing the trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll continue to hunt with my rifle, and I'm going to hunt with my bow. And I don't know that.
Have you ever shot a deer with your bow when you were shooting before?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
When I reflect back on bow hunting, so I was in my late teens and early 20s before I got out of it. I did shoot deer, multiple deer, but the thing that immediately comes to mind when I think back to that hunting experience was just being in the tree, connected to everything.
Sure.
That's it. And I ground hunted too. I could honestly be out there in a tree or in a ground blind. To me, getting a deer is a bonus.
It's not the end all.
It's not.
Yeah.
I love being there. Like there's nothing more exhilarating to me. If you're in a ground blind, when you've got a deer, you're sharing space with a deer that's literally 6 feet away from you.
Sure.
And it does not know you're there.
Right.
That is some of the wildest shit that I think you can experience as a person.
It's a pretty good adrenaline rush.
Oh, there's nothing like it. I mean, shooting a big buck is great, but man, like when Cable's in, because Cable and I have just getting to the point where he's going to start hunting alone. When you're in the blind together and you have an animal the size of a deer, you know, like literally coming at the blind, trying to figure out what's going on.
Sure.
That's exciting.
It is.
That's as good as harvesting an animal as anything. And then seeing the excitement in his face.
Oh, parents, you know, I was talking to people, you know, when their kids have shot their first animal, and I'm like, how great was it? And it was like, it's just the best thing ever.
Yep.
And to be able to witness that is just something really, really cool.
It really is.
Yeah.
We were sitting this was during firearm deer season about 3-4 years ago. We were in the blind together, afternoon, maybe late afternoon, and an eagle actually came down through the canopy. We're hunting under cedars.
Sure.
The eagle came down through the canopy and leveled right off, and we watched that thing fly between the tops of the cedars and the ground away from us, and then it disappeared back out of the canopy, and it was like, what in the hell?
How neat.
Did we just see? You know, because they're so big, and you could hear its wings
Sure. Yep.
going through, and it's like, I don't need a deer today. That was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. Yeah.
Just those things, they live with you.
Yeah, sometimes just watching. Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
When I always wondered, you know, when you're sitting out there, how can, you know, like a bear, which is a big animal, make so little noise, and this chipmunk that's over here sounds like a herd of elements coming
Yeah, I never
through.
thought of that. That is so true.
So how does that happen? You know, or, you know, even a deer. I mean, you look up and there it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't hear it coming in at all. How does, you know, or, you know, if you've been lucky enough, like some people are lucky enough to see a lot of moose, you know, and how do they get through the woods with that big
with the rack
on the and not make noise?
Yeah, it defies everything that you would believe to be true.
Yeah.
You know, about physics and just the ability for that to happen. I can think back, one memory I have from bow hunting, it wasn't shooting a deer, but I was in a tree, and this was just after all the leaves had come down and kind of in the hardwoods area.
Sure.
And it's one of the few times in my life that I can say I actually heard a deer coming in before I saw it.
And the crunching of the leaves.
Yes.
Yep.
Never forget that sound. And you're like in the tree, it's coming from behind you, and you're like, what the hell is that? Somebody coming? Is there somebody coming? And looking back, and then eventually seeing the deer come in, and it's like, wow.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. Normally in a blind, you know, we're just in like a pop-up tent. You don't
hear
you
stuff.
can't hear stuff.
No, you can't. You're definitely handicapped.
That is different in a tree. I've only hunted bow from a tree. Yeah, the sound I think maybe you do hear more.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense. You're not on ground level, and you're not surrounded by a structure.
But your structure that dampens it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
That's pretty neat.
Where are we at right now in time?
2:20.
Oh, I told you.
Yeah, it doesn't take long.
I
does it?
told you.
Yeah.
Time flies when you get on the mic.
It does.
It really does.
We need to talk about something that you enjoy or like or want to share with people.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
What would you say as we work toward wrapping her to somebody who's never shot a bow? Like, if you were going to, you know, welcome them to come see you, to give it a try, what would you tell them?
Just come.
Just stop in?
Just stop in. I mean,
And you have equipment?
I have equipment there, and it's tribal, and it's an easy sport to do. A lot of people think that it's way harder than it actually is. But I mean, it's as simple as throwing a ball.
You think people think it's hard?
Yeah. Yeah, we get people all the time that, come in with a group, or, it's parents that come with their kid, and I'm like, you want to have a go at it? No. I'm like, yeah, your kid's shooting. You should really, I got a bow over here. You can shoot,
Oh, you're talking a parent.
Parent or a kid, or I think it's great because you can have retired people.
Yeah.
Do you need something to do that's not exerting? I mean, obviously they're not going to do, your bike race, hey, if they're in their 70s, but we have people that shoot that are in their 70s.
Sure.
Because you can do it. So I've gone to the nursing home and done archery.
Have you?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
And some people have done it before, and some people had never, ever done it before. Yeah. And I'm like, but it's easier than you think. So, even if you're just curious and you want to have a go at it, you should come see us.
Yeah. Straight Line Archery. Ishpeming, Michigan.
Correct.
You got anything else you want to share?
No, I'm pretty much talked out.
You got to get the hell out of here. Go back to the shop.
I seriously need a drink of water.
All right. We're out.